Thoughts Matter. My name is James Barrow. Joining me today is Angelique Obiri. Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
And she's someone I work with. She's really fun, and so I'm just glad that she was willing to come on the show and talk about some interesting things. So, Angelique, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Happy to be here, James.
So, Angelique,
Yes,
you wanted to talk about venting.
I did.
So what are some of your thoughts on venting?
So, my thoughts on venting. I used to think it was really helpful,
Okay.
especially in a work, high stressful environment. If someone annoyed you, which I tend to get easily annoyed, just kind of pinging out, like, I can't believe they just did this. And the more I would vent, the less effective that I realized that it was.
Okay.
So-
Explain that.
Generally, like when you say you need to vent, it's because something is happening and your feelings are festering up, and if you don't release it, you kind of explodes. It's like you kind of just need to get it out there as a healthy expression and release. And I still think it's helpful for that. But I think it's even more healthy if you kind of not let yourself get to the point where you want to release. So one of the things that I found in the working environment is anytime I like spew out whether something annoys me, if it's the client or a colleague, I'm just kind of perpetuating negative thoughts. And so the more I focus on those, the more I kind of am looking for them. Versus if I would focus on the positive things, was there a misunderstanding? Could I have been clearer? Could they have been clearer? How can we improve this the next time? I think it would lead to a much more productive working environment and helping me to feel a lot more relaxed as opposed to needing to vent. So those were some of the initial thoughts that I have on venting.
Okay. Yep.
Kind of
I agree with
question,
you mostly.
yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. So to dive a little bit deeper, what do you think is maybe, besides just the practical reasons why it doesn't necessarily work, what are some of the deeper reasons why venting is not a good idea?
Well, like the first thing I said, I get annoyed easily. I think like after some personal reflection and self-awareness, oftentimes the things that annoy you and others are like things that you don't like about yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if, I can't think of a concrete example right now. Let's say you ask someone to do something and they don't really follow your directions and complete it to your satisfaction, right? So then you get frustrated and you need to vent, like, what were they thinking? Like, is this person an idiot? So if you think about it, like, that's probably one of my insecurities at work, because we deal with ambiguity a lot. You're kind of putting pieces together and hope it sticks when you present something. So is that me just being insecure? That are people saying that about my work when I send it out? So I think one of the reasons people vent is just frustrations that they have with their self or insecurities, and they're taking that out on other people. So I think that's one of the reasons it's unhealthy. Was your question why it was unhealthy, or why?
Well, yeah. So, just trying to get deeper and trying to get into what I guess the root issue with venting. Whenever we talk about something being a bad idea or being a bad thing to do, my question.
I don't think it's bad. I think
okay.
Doing it too much is the wrong behavior. I think you could, like, it's symptomatic. So you need to, like you said, go a little deeper to understand why you're venting so much.
Right. So that's what I was saying. My next question is always why. Why is it a problem? Why is it a problem in some cases, or why is it a problem? I would actually argue that it's always a problem.
Okay.
So here's where I'm coming from. I think this ties into a larger issue of gossip to some degree. Okay. So when we vent.
Gossip can be so much fun sometimes.
We're gonna do that. Let's talk specifically about venting about other people. Okay. Because that seems like the most common instance. So whether it's about a client or whether it's about another coworker or whatever, what does that? So if I am venting to you about so and so, we'll say Jim. All right. So I'm venting to you about Jim. Mm-hmm. Oh, shoot, we do work at the gym.
We do?
Yeah, just recently started. Okay, well, I don't know him well enough to really vent about him, so we'll still stick with it.
I don't know Jane.
Jane? I don't know Jane either. Okay, so I'm venting to you about Jane. Jane really, really has just pissed me off. And so I come to you and I start telling you all these things. Now, let's say a few minutes later, or maybe an hour later, I've had some time to cool off. And and Jane's walking by, and I say, "Hey, Jane, how are you?" And she says, "Oh, I'm good." And we have a little conversation, and you're there, and you see us talking, and we seem totally chummy, right?
Right.
So you're thinking to yourself, at least I would think to myself if I were you, and I think that most people think this whether consciously or not. Wait a second, if he's not, what's he really think about Jane? Quick interruption here. My microphone died immediately after this, and the rest of this video will use my camera microphone, which will include a lot more background noise. So I just want to warn you, you'll have to fight a little bit harder to hear what we're saying above some of the background noise. It's not too bad, and the next 4 minutes are probably the worst of it. So stick with it. Hope you enjoy the rest of the video. He just told me what I think he really thinks about Jane. Right. Now he's being all chummy with her. So the next time that I'm really polite to you, you're gonna wonder, wait a second here.
Yeah.
Am I really being honest? So there's this question of integrity. We'll get to that in a bit too. So that's kind of where I come to the gossip discussion. I think that really applies to venting about other people.
Okay. Yeah, I never thought about the authenticity component of it, where because I don't see it that way sometimes when people vent. Like when you think about a romantic relationship, like generally you truly care about the person, but then there are also things that they do that you don't like. So you can be unhappy with those things, but still respect them as a person. Mm-hmm. So in that instance, if you were venting about Jane, and I knew that you were venting, and then kind of chummed up with her later, then I don't think I would question that. But I guess that also depends on the person too. Because generally, if someone frustrates me, I guess I have this guilt and a caveat that I'm always like, they're doing this. Like I do kind of like caveat it with, I like them or not. And then I go into what's annoying the crap out of me. And if it's a person that I genuinely try to be consistent, if I don't like, I probably wouldn't chum up too much with them. So,
okay,
like from my perspective, when I vent, I try to be consistent and like, I guess it's clear to my fellow person whether this is someone that I still respect even though they annoy me, or if it's actually, I wouldn't chum up to them.
So in that instance, you would assume about me, because it sounds like this is how you do it.
We haven't vented together. That's the problem. So I don't know what kind of intro you are.
I try not to. But so in that situation, you would assume that me being all chummy with Jane was my actual feeling sorts, or me venting was like a one-off, like, I was just really frustrated in the moment. So is that sort of what you're saying? I mean, depending on the person, but that's what you're saying. It would be more acceptable, I suppose, or at least you wouldn't question their authenticity. And that makes sense. I hadn't thought about that.
But I do, so I do see the integrity part of it, and I guess that's why I try to, I guess, have a caveat. I'm not saying the way I complain about people is right, but I don't want my integrity to be questioned, and people see like two sides of my behavior. So I don't know where I was going with that. Sorry.
No worries. So okay, I know we're gonna jump around here. So the three key topics, and this is what's gonna go in the title, are gonna be venting, gossip, and integrity. So we'll hit them all, and I wasn't sure at first. I thought maybe we'd hit them in a certain order, but we're just gonna jump around it all because they all intertwine. So to come back to integrity, I've talked about this one time on the show, but I think it's about time to bring it back up. So how do you define integrity?
I'm not a definition person.
Okay. You don't have to answer, but everyone has some definition that they use normally. The opinions of the background noise expressed in this video do not necessarily represent the opinions of this show.
I think integrity is a part of someone's character, and it is just how you consistently act and.
Okay, so
Dictionary first, and then we'll play again.
Well, okay, so the one I've heard most commonly is it's doing what's right even when no one's looking. Right? I think people have heard that and can relate to that. And I've used that for a while, but then when I was in, I think, high school English, I learned another definition that really stuck with me, and I really appreciate. And it's integrity is when the inside equals the outside.
Okay.
So when what's in your heart equals how you're acting. Or even if you think about structural integrity in a building, it's like when the outside it looks like it's a strong, safe building. It has integrity if the inside is also strong and secure. or it doesn't have structural integrity if the inside is kind of rotted,
Isn't it
but on the
English
outside.
class?
Yeah, I had a really good high school English teacher. So that stuck with me, and it actually impacts my life very significantly right now because. So to come back to the gossip discussion, if I'm venting to you, and I really do like the person or whatever, then in that moment I don't have integrity. I'm showing a lack of integrity because what I really think about that person is not matching what I'm telling you. However, with gossip, it's usually flipped. Normally with gossip, and this can depend on the character of the person and whatnot, but generally with gossip, what you're saying behind someone's back is what you really think. Mm-hmm. And then what you say, because you're not willing to say it to their face. And so gossip is one of the most blatant instances of a lack of integrity, in my opinion. That's one that tears up workplaces. It really, really can mess up a team. Right. And I've seen that. I was a manager in the food service industry, and you could just see how gossip can just tear people apart. Mm-hmm. So as an instance of violating integrity, I think gossip is a really big one. And I think venting, it has the same impact. So that's how I've defined integrity, and I think that's it just kind of sheds a new light on how I look at a lot of different situations, including just how I, whether I. Let me pull another example from the food service industry. So when I was serving guests, if I was going to smile at them and be polite and memorize their name and know their orders and whatnot, I was going to be really kind to them. I didn't want to then, I would never want to turn around and roll my eyes if they were just, jerks, right? So if I was going to be polite to them behind the counter when they could see me, I needed to be that way about them all the time. So I needed to think of them very well in my heart, as well as when I'm communicating with other team members, be like, yeah, they're just fine. They might be a little picky sometimes, but we can get past that.
But are you being true to yourself and trying to overcompensate for someone else being a jerk?
So okay, yeah, that's a good question. And I don't know exactly what the answer is, but I think that everyone has enough good qualities to appreciate, that you can always manage to appreciate some qualities in people and look past their other qualities. And that's what I would try to do.
And I agree with you for the most part that, and this is kind of why I talked about why venting isn't good, because you're focusing on the negative versus focusing on the positive. And so the more you see the good things, the better attitude that you have toward them, the better attitude you have towards yourself, the better your working environment will be. But I also think that sometimes that's exhausting, because sometimes people really are jerks, and to have to continuously look beyond versus just accepting, this is a person I really don't want to be around or serve or work with.
Which is where the poker face comes in. And this is the other component of integrity. So you want the inside to equal the outside, right? So think of it like a window, right? So if you're standing on the outside, you want the window to be clear, where you can actually see what's really on the inside. Right. If it's you don't want it to be like a facade where it's like a picture where you think you're looking at it, you're looking inside, but you're seeing something else. You're not actually seeing what's inside. A poker face though is like the blinds closed, right? So it's a window, you can see, but you just can't see what's inside. So there's no lying there. There's no lack of integrity, but it works out really. I mean, it just tells people that they just can't see what's inside, and I think that is always going to be better than venting, even if venting is a real representation of what's on the inside. Okay. So in those instances where you really are just frustrated with someone, and to keep your integrity, you just want to let that out. That could keep your integrity, but that's usually not socially acceptable. And so I think the poker face is a great compromise where you're still maintaining your integrity, but you're also being socially acceptable.
Right. I think maybe a level deeper or something that's harder to do but fairer to yourself and the other person is when you used your blinds analogy. Sure, you cut it off, but that's actually not letting the light through and not It's almost a little bit of being like think about if your house is messy, then you'll just shut the shutters so people can't see inside.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the way I would like to look at it, in a professional environment, if there's someone you're working with, they have qualities that are not redeeming, or let's not make it personal. Maybe it's actually the quality of their work that
Sure.
isn't acceptable if it's a peer. Like obviously if it's a direct report, you have to do something about it. But say it's a peer. Instead of shutting the blinds, maybe open them up a little bit, be supportive, but just kind of say, I noticed you did X, Y, and Z. Maybe it would be better if you did it a little differently the next time, and the client would be more responsive. So instead of a poker face, like having the courage to speak up and express what you would vent about, but tell them to their face instead of doing it in a way that's gossipy.
Yeah. Which would again be a representation of what you're actually thinking, which would be
Right.
maintaining integrity. So that's the ultimate takeaway is all of these things that we're saying are good examples of what you should do.
Right.
Are things that's you still can maintain your integrity. What's not acceptable is being dishonest, putting up a facade, and then later kind of letting what you really think out, because that's just you're just gonna lose all credibility with anyone that you are honest with. And then I guess hypothetically speaking, you could have a really nasty inside and keep it all nice and tidy on the outside, and never suffer the social ramifications. But I think even then, the damage to your psyche would just be too much. You know,
I feel like most people don't do that.
But I feel like most
They're
people's
really dirty
remedy
on the
for
inside,
that
they're
is
gonna let it
to
out.
vent, is to let it out.
Right.
Versus, it really is possible to appreciate people in such a way that you can change your opinion of people. And that's the hardest thing to do. But I think that's the most rewarding, when you can take someone that you see a lot of bad qualities on them, about them, but you can say, you know what, I appreciate this, I appreciate this, I appreciate this,
Right.
and
Focus on the positive.
I'm gonna like them regardless of what they do. You know, and then you can very genuinely be polite. You can, to put it very simply, this is maybe too simply, but it's worked for me. When I see someone and I smile and I say hi, or I shake their hand or whatever, I want them to know that I'm actually happy to see you. Because that's what's coming out. If I'm smiling at them saying, hi, it's good to see you, then that needs to be real. That needs to be genuine. And so if that's true in every situation, then I know I'm doing well. That's kind of like the rubric that I use, or the parameter. So I don't know. So integrity, avoid gossip. Don't do gossip at all. Venting is generally, I think, a bad idea. I guess it could be done technically within the realms of the boundaries of integrity, but in those cases, there's always a better alternative, I think. Would you agree with me there?
I still feel that equating venting with a lack of integrity may be a little bit it feels a little harsh.
Yeah.
Because I think you can still, like I think to my grandmother, who I said, don't say anything about someone that you wouldn't want to say to their face.
Mm-hmm.
But she also, she talked about some of the church ladies that rubbed her the wrong way too. So I'm like, if it was okay for her, it's okay for me.
I would say it's not okay for her, but okay.
Let me go back to my grandmother thought.
Okay.
I think it's a little harsh. I agree with you that you don't want to show two different faces to people. But I don't know.
So yeah, okay. Well, I think that kind of wraps it up. Is there anything that we disagree with here?
So my thought when I was initially wanting to talk about why venting isn't good is it was more of an inward look at yourself and like how your focus is.
Okay.
So I guess you bring it to integrity. Right. I bring it to like self-reflection.
Okay.
So when I feel the need to want to vent about a situation, instead of like keeping the poker face or like shutting things off, my new thought that I have to train myself to do is, why is this bothering me?
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes it's actually not the person that's bothering, it's just the situation. So what is it about the situation? And like there's multiple people involved. And so thinking through that and why it's affecting me. So I feel like it's like could be part of your character, but it's also just like kind of part of your esteem and your emotions and the way you interact with the world. So I think that's another component of why people need to vent, because they don't want to. It's a lot easier just to complain versus to think of how can I make this situation better for myself and better for the people around me. So I like looking at the positive approach of, you talked about what is good about XYZ situation. So it's like training yourself to see the good versus the bad. Because often it's easier to find the fault than it's
Right.
the good.
Right.
So
I
don't think that's a disagreeing point, but
no, that's a good point. And I'm surprised I didn't think about this, because when you suggested venting, the first thing that came to mind was I guess gossip and integrity.
Right.
But there's also another point that's very closely tied to venting that I'm passionate about, and that is personal responsibility or personal accountability. And there's a book I read called QBQ. Have you ever read that?
No.
And it's called the title is The Question Behind the Question, and the idea is it tells us to change how we ask our questions. So it talks about what he calls the author. I can't remember the author's name. It's John Miller, I think. He talks about IQs, incorrect questions, and incorrect questions are questions that start with when, or who, or why. Why is this not working?
Yeah.
Who did this? When is this going to get better? These are, and he calls them incorrect question because they're always blaming something else, and they're always put you in a position that is helpless. They assume that you have no power over the situation, and so they are not practical. I mean, that's the epitome of an impractical question. If you are then limiting your own power. So what he says instead to ask are, he calls it the question behind the question. I'm not really sure exactly what his reason for calling it that is, except for just QBQ, I guess sounds good. But the idea, those are questions that start with how or what, are followed by I, and then have some kind of an action. I think that's how he defines it. So basically, how can I help the situation? What can I do to make this better? These are questions that are, if nothing else, they're practical.
Right.
They have the nice quality of taking personal responsibility, but if nothing else, they put the emphasis on you, and they actually can get things done. And so whenever we feel the need to vent or to blame, sure, there's plenty of blame. In a court of law, maybe that's where it would actually be worth assigning blame to certain people. But apart from that, there's really never a reason to blame anyone else, because it just doesn't help you in any way to blame someone else for your situations. Even just rationalizing, well, it was really their fault, it just doesn't do you any good. But asking questions like, how can I fix this now that we're in this situation? Or what can I do to improve my relationship with this person who's been a jerk to me? Well, that is an actual practical question that you can then, it puts the ball in your court to make it better. And so I love the practicality of that. I love the fact that, and I think that morally and ethically it makes sense too, because I think personal accountability is something that people should take very seriously.
Right.
And that's kind of a funny statement to say, because personal accountability is something that you can only take on yourself, and to then force it on someone else is just kind of silly. But I think that it's an important thing.
That makes sense. I like those questions. I like the how and the what when it's. I think that's a good thing to ask yourself when you're in that situation where it's either kind of like a positive or a negative response.
It just takes the negative response away. You just leave any room for it, because if you're asking those questions, it immediately takes your thoughts off of whatever else or whoever else has wronged you, or whatever situation you're in that you wish that you weren't in. It just takes the emphasis off of that, and it really starts to make you thinking positively, yes, but mostly it just kind of engages your problem solving side of your mind, which I think people tend to get a little more detached and maybe just find themselves enjoying solving the problem more.
Yeah.
So I don't know on a deeper level why it works, but it just does. I love the practicality.
Related to personal accountability, if that makes sense. It's like I definitely think the other questions are needed in other settings, but.
Right. Well, again, court of law. When you are actually assigning blame, that's your role.
Missing a deliverable.
Well, yes, but missing a liberal even.
That's deliverable. Business jargon for something you turn in, usually to a client.
Then, so unless you're punishing someone or firing someone, what good is done by asking, who, when, why? I mean, to actually practically move forward at some point, you might ask those things just to satisfy your curiosity or whatever, to assign punishment, whatever, or to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Well, it doesn't have to be a
But
punishment.
to move on,
I really wish I'd let Angelique speak more. As an interviewer, I should not be cutting her off.
you've got to start asking those personal questions of how can I improve this? How, because you can't ever force someone else to do anything. You only have control over your own actions. And so if anything's going to get done that you have control over anyway, it's only going to start when you start asking those questions. Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much, Angelique. I really appreciate you coming on. It's been fun.